that actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's like...
That's a really good way to deal with that. God damn. That's the issue in this conversation is the more she cooks his, which she did right here, the more Charlie goes, and this is exactly why you have to stay in the kitchen, because you hurt my feelings when you're outside of the kitchen. There is no microphones in the kitchen.
So I'm a feminist.
Boo.
My question is about the role of women, though. What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
Well, thank you for that. Can I take it? I don't even want to take this detour, but can we both agree on what a woman is?
Yes. An adult human female, it's a biological state of being that is also socially experienced. Can I please elucidate just one example of that social experience?
Yeah, I was going to answer your question, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So let's say you're a member of a tribe.
Why did you boo her? Because she says she's a feminist. Duh. I'm apolitical, and apolitical means you have to hate feminism, because feminism is politics, and on women is not politics. It's just like the highest state of being apolitical.
And that in that tribe, you have the biological female anatomy, and in order to become a woman in that tribe, you have to also get a tattoo. That's a social experience that's mapped onto biological reality.
So can a woman have a prostate?
Can a woman have a prostate? Biologically speaking, a woman is an adult human female that has a biological reality, but it's also social experience, right? So I don't...
Yeah, it's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
So,
yes. The answer is yes, because as she also correctly pointed to, it is also socially experienced. It's like, dude, people love, Republicans especially, love playing this song and dance where they'll be like, race is a social construct. Okay, I'm black now. It's like, you can have biological markers of race, but the interactions and the analysis of what constitutes someone as a black person is still social, okay? Or what constitutes someone as a white person is still social. You can still socially experience these things. For example, I say I'm white all the time. Go ask an Islamophobic person if I'm white, and you will very quickly realize maybe I'm not so white because my name is Hasan and I'm Muslim and I'm from Turkey. Like, that's it. That is the perfect representation, because when you look at my skin color, or when you look at me from afar, especially if I'm like shaven and you don't know that my name is Hasan, you're not going to think that I'm anything but white, especially in the United States of America. Whereas if I was in Germany, for example, a country with a ton of Turkish migrants, then I'm automatically disqualified from being a part of the German in-group, because they have a better understanding of like what a Turkish person looks like. So they would very quickly clock me as a Turkish person and therefore not officially German. That's it. So yes, something can have biological markers while also simultaneously have a social performance associated with it, regardless of said biological markers, regardless of said biological preconditions. This is precisely the reason why when you see a trans woman, like let's say Hunter Schafer, even if you know that they are a trans woman and you want to be transphobic, if you were to point to Hunter Schafer and say, that man over there is sitting next to my bag, no one would understand who the fuck you're talking about. They would say, what do you mean? What are you saying? Like, you would not be able to communicate with other people, because gender is a social performance at the end of the fucking day. And this is before we even talk about sex and intersex people, and the fact that even a prostate or other kind of like biological markers that Charlie Kirk would present as like being the end all be all of womanhood also kind of fall apart, because even sex itself is not a binary. So much so that even Ben Shapiro nowadays says it's bimodal, which is at least closer to the truth.
So as per my definition of woman, I would say that people who have a prostate are biologically male, but they can sometimes be socially treated as women.
Okay, got it. So women can have prostates. Got it. Okay.
By the way, I feel like this is the most pro-trans argument you're ever going to get in the UK, because even that in and of itself is like, it's, you know, how is it not binary for curiosity? Because intersex people exist. It's not a 1-0. You're either a man or a woman. Even when it comes to biological sex, okay? When you talk about biology, when you talk about the biological version of sex, male versus female, even then there is a tremendous number of people that are intersex.
Okay. So you're a feminist
Yeah, gender is not binary, and neither is sex.
that actually isn't just fighting for women, you're also fighting for men.
So, yes, men also experience harms from patriarchy, but I argue...
We're talking about the same feminism, though, just make sure. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, men also experience harm from patriarchal domination, but I would argue that those harms come from that system of domination itself. In the same way, for example, this isn't a threat, but if I reached across and punched you in the face, then my hand might hurt, right? So, are we understanding that there are, patterns of power? So, I would also fight for the rights of men.
Wow, that was actually a pretty good analogy to describe how men are harmed by patriarchy. Okay, respect to this person.
As a feminist, just as I would fight for the rights of women.
Sure. Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
I think I would have a few responses to that. I think that women report more stress and dissatisfaction.
Dude, no one is happier than they were 40 years ago. What the does that mean? Yeah, I wonder if there is an ever-present domineering mode of existence that perhaps ruins people's hope for a better future. I don't know. I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Action today, because not because they have more rights or because of feminism, but because they're under dual pressure to both excel professionally and also because of the domestic labor in homes that is structured around outdated expectations. So, for example, studies like the OECD's Better Life Index show that women's life expectancy, education levels, professional achievements have risen in countries with higher gender inequality. So I would argue that what you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
Yeah. That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny.
We've always
no, hold on a second. Why are suicide rates going up more for women?
I think that
Forget
encourages...
complaining. Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
I think that even if both men and women have become unhappier, men's suicide rates have risen as well, and that's also been exponential. Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation? There could be also other explanations.
Of course, obviously, but feminism is the glaring thing in front of us, where we have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up. And we did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Bretty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said, you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control. And all of a sudden, women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago. And I just have to ask the question, why is that? Is it working? And maybe there are biological differences between men and women.
Yeah, women would be way happier if they were servile inside of the home. They would be way happier as opposed to, being a cog in the capitalist machine. Charlie loves capitalism. He defends capitalism unconditionally. He will never assume that that is the real problem here for all people, women or men.
Women that we should respect, and that deep down, a lot of women want to get married and have children. In fact, we should applaud it and we should support it.
Okay, also, ain't nobody is saying women shouldn't stay at home if they choose to do so. You're not arguing about that either. You want women to have no options. You're angry at the fact that women have the option. That's it. And because you're anti-woman, you're suggesting that women are stupid and should not even be presented with this option, because if even given the option, they'll choose the dumb option as opposed to the much better option of staying at home. This is about relegating women back to a servile state. That's all this is. And it's unfortunately a very, very popular way of communicating, especially to the youth, because there's a lot of interpersonal resentment towards women amongst young men for a multitude of different reasons. Dating life and things of that nature play a big role in this. And a lot of these opportunists actually capture the attention of these malleable children and redirect their anger. And instead of, making them engage in self-criticism and engage in self-improvement, they cause them to become whiny little crybabies that think like, oh, well, women don't want to be with me, so it's a societal issue, and that they should know their place in society and they should have to be with me at all times if I choose that. And then there's obviously the older person version of this, which Jordan Peterson demonstrates.
We should say it means nothing if you're going to go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
I think I would bring 2 points to that. The first one is just really simple, which is that you can ascribe liberalism all you want as the cause of the unhappiness. I would argue something else. I would say that it's certain economic policy that has very little to do with the social acceptance of alternative lifestyles. I would say that we can recognize that income inequality across a vast swathe of Western countries has increased, which causes all kinds of social ills, a lack of social cohesion, housing price growth doesn't correspond with wage growth, monopolies increasingly become kind of emboldened to interfere with politics, and monopolies don't prioritize social health either. I think that those offer more compelling reasons for a decline in happiness than an increase in freedoms, because just one more thing, on an intuitive basis, generally speaking, people want more freedom, not less.
Okay, so if that's true, why is it, do you agree that the happiest women of the West are married with kids?
I would have to look into it, but I think there are certain...
Yeah, if this is even true, which I don't know if it is, but even if it was true, the explanation for it is very simple. Yes, they don't have to work, or at least their only work is inside of the household where they have a degree of autonomy, as opposed to in the normal workplace where they don't. And it's usually from financially stable households that allow a single income, single earner household to even exist. But that is if we actually assume that this is true. And I have no reason to believe that this is true, for the record.
Right. There are and objectively, we know that, right? The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that...
Okay, then he just like jumps off to a totally irrelevant point that he just made up. You're not bringing any data. You're just simply relying on the audience to go, I agree with that. The women that tear down statues do seem angry. That's not a point. That has nothing to do with anything.
That actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's like...
That's a really good way to deal with that. God damn. The problem here is, the more she dominates Charlie, the more Charlie is reaffirmed in his previous position that women should never be allowed a microphone. That's the issue. That's the issue in this conversation, is the more she cooks his, which she did right here, the more Charlie goes, and this is exactly why you have to stay in the kitchen, because you hurt my feelings when you're outside of the kitchen. There is no microphones in the kitchen. I remember her saying she's a leftist from her convo with you. Yeah, I think so. But she was also like following a bunch of random accounts that obviously it was like weird. I don't know. She seemed nice though. She seemed cool. I think she was just only like she was a little anti-sex worker, but not even all that much. Do you concede that women with enough privilege and wealth to not need to work are much happier than the other women who have capitalism's boot on their neck? Exactly. That's the question that Charlie asked. The greatest way to destroy Charlie Kirk's argument here is basically to say, don't you feel like the systematic enforcement of capitalism and the incentive structure created within capitalism is making it infinitely harder to have children and two parents with one party working in a household?
Typically, we know that, right? The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's like that. It's a little bit of a one-liner. The happy and the grateful. The happy and the grateful usually don't go burn down Wendy's in their spare time, of which we saw in our country all throughout a single summer. But as a side note, you would agree, objectively, study after study, survey after survey, that the women of the West that are married and have children, especially a lot of children, are far happier than even the ones that earn more money correlated at the same age.
So I also don't think that happiness is a very good metric, and neither do you, because you think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making. So I don't think smiles per capita is a particularly convincing way to measure whether or not we should encourage women to be autonomous. I think we should maximize agency within a fair system that has reasonable parameters, because it's expedient, it's good for the economy, it's logical, it's the moral thing, because if we can't prove the material harms, we shouldn't discourage it. And also, self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk. If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable. But so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens. How are we going to measure...
You would say extremely miserable?
No, I'm kind of making a joke.
No, I mean, but seriously, like...
Yeah, she's saying she would say she's extremely miserable because she has to talk to you. Oh, God. This is the other debate technique that I also despise, which is this is like a practical application of it. You're seeing it in real time, which is my interlocutor has no capacity to be humorous or engage in like hyperbolic statements or in an effort to like entertain, say something funny. I am going to present it as though she is being utterly sincere. I have no reason to believe that this person was trying to make a joke. It's just like this weaponization of playing dumb. This weaponization of just making every statement come across as though it's perfectly sincere. Now, obviously, a lot of the debate pervert communities that come after me also deploy this technique with regular frequency to clips of mine where they'll be like, I'll say something like very clearly a joke, like offhandedly. Like I'm reminded of that Discord, the Discord messages where I was like responding to a chatter being like, I'm gonna kill myself. And then people were like, oh, he wants to commit suicide. Hasan is actually suicidal. It's like the most commonplace thing that people say online. Very clearly, I'm not being sincere. I'm not suicidal in any capacity. Why the would you ever take that seriously?
But hold on. I mean, like, that's an important point, though, is that the women in the West have it the best in the world, and yet they're way unhappier than women of sub-Saharan Africa. There's something fundamentally wrong here. Because the women of sub-Saharan Africa have something that a lot of women in the West do not have. The women in the West have cats, and they have good jobs. And the women of sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine, and they have kids. And maybe there's a biological undercurrent that is keeping a lot of women from realizing their full potential. And so without...
Again, this argument in and of itself only works if you believe women are too stupid to know what's best for them. This argument is an Ouroboros. It only works if your starting position already is that women are somehow lesser and don't know what's good for them. And you only believe that if you are misogynistic. Because the argument is, if presented with the option of financial freedom versus like staying at home and being a mom, women end up choosing financial freedom, and that makes them sad as opposed to staying at home and being a mom. And therefore, women are very clearly, due to the economic liberty presented to them, making the wrong options because they're too stupid to choose the right option. This also obviously completely avoids any sort of real structural analysis of why women are choosing to work as opposed to choosing to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mom and a wife. The problem there is obviously capitalism.
Reading your phone and just like, connecting.
I'm not really reading my phone.
Well, it's fine. Sure, then you can answer without it. Fair enough. Would you agree that it's a good thing that more women get married and have children in the West?
I would ask you, would you say that a sub-Saharan African woman who's experienced female genital mutilation and checks extremely happy in a survey, and I also would check extremely happy in a survey, who do you think would be objectively more happy, even if they both check the same answer?
No, again, so I fully, if you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. Like, I'm all...
This has nothing to do with Islam, you dumb This is like literally a regionally specific genital mutilation practice that it literally has nothing to do with Islam. The notion that this is like a practice in Islam is so stupid. Ugh. God, this is literally like post 9/11 Islamophobia. This is post 9/11 Islamophobia. Ah, the barbaric Muslims they're doing genital mutilation.
All for that?
Me too.
Okay, good. So we agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
We actually
agree
have
on
agreement.
many things.
And we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the UK either.
Hold on. So hold on a second.
Ooh, that was good. I think that's still stupid, but the whole like, don't even give him an ounce of like Muslim fundamentalism has nothing to do with female genital mutilation. But having said that, her retort was good, where it's like, yeah, if we're gonna shut off immigration into the country based on religious fundamentalist values, then evangelical Christianity should also be shut off.
That's funny. Hold on. Can you show me a single? Show me, what would your example, because I have 50, of a single Christian country that you would say mistreats women right now?
America.
Dog, your argument is to literally do what you think Sharia is a fundamentalist approach to the gender dynamic. You only attribute that to Islam because you're stupid, but like you want Christian Sharia in the goddamn country. That's what you're advocating for right now. You are literally advocating for that, sitting on that side of the podium. What do you mean? This is why I always say conservatives hate the conservatism of other countries. Conservatives love to talk about how barbaric and backwards conservatives in other countries are, while literally demanding that we do the same America, but within the confines of their in-group. You are a Trump supporter. You love JD Vance. JD Vance thinks women are broodmares that are only good for breeding. He is a pronatalist. He's like a psycho. What a stupid argument. Name one Christian country that mistreats women. Yeah, if left to your own devices, America would resemble a Taliban rulership of Afghanistan, but just in an American version. As a matter of fact, you're moving American society in that direction right now. You just only hate it when it's like fundamentalism coming from brown people. That's the problem.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We had a female woman vice president.
Dude, excuse me. A woman was vice president, and I hate her because she's a whore. Charlie's like, we had a whore. We had a whore vice president who was who had inferior IQ, a female woman whore. How dare you say that I mistreat women? What's next? You're going to tell me America's racist? Oh, that's amazing. I love that. He's like, plenty of Muslim countries have had heads of state that were women. Yeah, Iran had a Department of Environment, leader of the Department of Environment. She served vice president for women and family affairs. And Turkey had a head of state. Pakistan had a head of state that was a woman. Turkey had a head of state that was a woman. Multiple decades before America even had like Hillary Clinton run for president. You know, yeah, Tansu Çiller and Benazir Bhutto.
We had a female vice president, a female speaker of the House. Women earn more than men in America.
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Did women get treated better in Rwanda?
Okay, I might be super off this. Like, is Rwanda Islamic? Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually. It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of a side note, but you must be morally clear because you brought up female genital mutilation, which is
Islamic.
A teaching of the Islamic faith. But as
it's not. It's not. What the are you talking about? God, it's just so basic. It's just basic shit. This is like addressed by Reza Aslan in like 2004, okay? What the No, it is not an Islamic teaching nor an Islamic practice at all.
Okay, in which case I think we get...
Do I start bringing this to a close, please?
Okay, I think just one final thing, which is that in which case we get to a really interesting argument about what parts of womanhood can be demarcated to the social and what kinds of womanhood can be demarcated to biological. So, for example, my anatomy is demarcated to the biological, but the fact that I might potentially be a better nurturer than a man, I would demarcate that to the social, you might demarcate that to the biological, in which case we have differing moral scales of value. I would ask why we should necessarily prioritize your moral scale of value, which prioritizes things like the birth rate, when in actual fact there are various other moral scales of value. And if you yourself are a free market American, why is it the case that you would not, like the previous speaker noted,
I've already answered
extend personal freedoms towards all spheres, including a private sphere?
I believe in absolute truth claims, and it's absolutely wrong and bad when a society stops having kids to replace their own population. And then you have to import the third world and you become the third.
Oh my God. And then just like racist drivel at the end. What's the difference? What is the difference between a person that grew up in the third world as opposed to a person that... How is saying third world racist? No, dumb. Implying that people coming in from the global south into the civilized Western democracy is somehow actually a burden for civilized Western democracies is the racist aspect of it, which is why I said someone should ask Charlie what the problem is when you have people coming in from the third world. You can use a term created during the Cold War to mark down countries that were non-aligned as a pejorative. Here, like for example, when I use queer as a catch-all umbrella terminology for the entire LGBTQ movement, I'm not using it as a pejorative. But if Charlie Kirk were to say queer or say like queers or whatever, he would be using the same exact term as a pejorative. I don't care about the problematic nature of saying third world, okay? That's not my point. Pick a better struggle here, okay? He literally said, if women in the West don't have kids, we don't have a future. Guess who the we is? Yeah. Third world is not inherently a pejorative, even though its application in the Western world oftentimes is a pejorative. It's utilized as a catch-all term for, less developed countries that have less developed people. That's what they mean. All right, Charlie Kirk versus Cambridge professor.
A very, very short question. Israel versus Hamas. Good guy versus bad guy.
No, boo. Unless he meant Hamas, a good guy, Israel, bad guy, in which case, sure.
Russia versus Ukraine. Who's the good guy and who's the bad guy?
Both are bad, one is worse.
Come on, dude.
Which way round?
Russia is worse than Ukraine.
Okay, so why haven't we pursued that?
What do you mean?
Well, it seems to me that in the whole of the current US proposition, that Ukraine is being the bad guy.
In what way? We funded Ukraine upwards to $200 billion.
Absolutely. But
We just signed a mineral deal with Ukraine, not Russia.
Okay, what a way to present that as it's a benefit to Ukraine, by the way. Dude, what do you mean? We're extracting their natural resources. I mean, come on. Yeah, it kind of seems like we're the bad guy. It kind of seems like we're the worst guy, actually.
Yeah, but you are expecting Ukraine to give up 20% of its territory to someone who invaded it.
Well, is Crimea part of Russia or Ukraine?
Ukraine.
That's where we don't agree.
Well, I'm afraid that's part of international treaty. That's not up for grabs.
Well,
How does... Dude, this is crazy to me. Because, like, if you were to ask Charlie this, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, he would not say this. There's no way he would say this. Like, it's shocking that he's saying this. It's shocking that he's even done I've seen this clip. He's done a little bit of the reading to at least, like, explain the historic significance of Crimea. But, like, coming from a guy, wait, he said Russia is the worst guy, but also Crimea is Russia. I don't get it. Yeah, he's like, he's saying Russia is the worst guy for invading Ukraine. I mean, none of this has to make sense. He's just downloaded the party line, okay? But what's shocking to me is the fact that, like, in an effort to download the party line, he has to have a more nuanced position about, like, Russia's interest in Crimea, which is shocking because it also directly undermines American interest.
well, it's interesting. I mean,
That's-
hold on. I mean, even Zelensky has said he's willing to give up Ukraine.
No.
Who's
America signed the agreement that gave Ukraine Crimea
Right.
when
and
the
Putin
Soviet
annexed it.
Union ended.
Right. It was done. First of all, it never should have been done. It was largely ceremonial.
No.
But
Based! Charlie Kirk said the Soviet Union should have never been dissolved. He said it's the greatest setback of mankind. It destroyed every country, including the Eastern European territories. Wow, dude. Oh my God. Charlie Kirk is a Stalinist. He's not wrong. He's right. It should have never happened. Comrade Charlie. He said that. He definitely meant that. That's what he meant. That's what he implied.
however,
whether it
it was
shouldn't have
annexed
said it
under
was
Obama.
done.
Yes, and it was a mistake. And it should be given back to Russia as a sign of good gesture to end this conflict.
Okay.
Who's currently controlling Crimea? Where was the Russian Navy headquartered in World War II? Where was the end of World War II signed? This is very important.
I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying that if we're being logical on what has happened, that you are now arguing against that flow. And I don't understand it. Because actually, why is Ukraine the bad guy?
No, I said they're bad. They're not the bad guy.
Yeah, well, you said they were both bad, but one was more bad
Correct,
than the other.
yes.
So why is Ukraine bad?
Well, there's a lot wrong with Ukraine. First of all, they're not a democracy.
Say
Zelensky
that to the
refuses to hold an
satellite countries
election.
of the time as they
Well, no,
suffered
he
famine
can't
under the
hold an
USSR.
Oh, wait, did Churchill hold an election during the war?
Because under his constitution...
Hold on, Lincoln held election.
I mean, don't get me started on, crop mismanagement. Okay, we're not going to heal old wounds here right now.
During the war, that's not true. He can call an election. He can call a snap election. He's full dictator of the country.
No.
Because he knows that the people of Ukraine would kick him out immediately because he's deeply unpopular. In fact, if he wanted to show a statement to the world, he would call an election and win by 80%.
Dude, this line is so stupid. It's like, bro, what the do you mean? Like, there is no real elections that take place in Russia in any shape or form. Even if you were to criticize Zelensky being undemocratic, it's not about like not holding elections. It's more so about like shutting off any kind of left party, like not allowing disallowing them from participating in the democratic process in Ukraine. That is the actual undemocratic thing. that Zelensky has done. It's perfectly understandable for Zelensky to not be able to hold fucking elections when a third of the goddamn country is under Russian annexation and another half of the country is overseas. I guess you could technically do overseas elections, but you know, it's just, this is such a stupid thing to fucking mention.
And say, see, I'm super popular. So that's number one. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with a person being propped up as a government we're sending $200 billion to that refuses even to face his voters.
Okay, I can't agree with you factually on that at all.
Okay.
I mean, constitutionally, Ukraine is not able to hold an election because it's under military law at the moment, and that's just a matter of fact.
Again, he can, as a prime minister or president.
Like, this is so silly. I want Ukraine to hold elections. I know there's a lot of chatters in here who will say the exact same thing because they just like heard this as a talking point and they think it's like a valid talking point. I mean, look, I think there's very valid reasons. All right. It's the same principle behind even like suppression of speech in times of war and in times of conflict. You have to be a little bit more realistic when you're talking about the situation. It's giving, what if you were gay in Gaza? A little bit. I mean, obviously Ukraine is different because it's a nation state with sovereignty, at least some degree of sovereignty. And also, what happens if like Zelensky wins the election? What then? You know, voter turnout down because they're being cruise missiled. Yeah.
He could do whatever he wants.
He can't.
Okay, all right, we're going to just go back and
sign an
forth
executive order and change their constitution.
Okay.
Neither can the American president either. So hopefully there's a bit of...
He could even do a ceremonial election to see where he actually stands with the people.
I think we call those opinion polls.
Yes, and they're very negative.
Firmly ahead in the opinion
Again, but you would agree that a person that holds on to power without the...
Wait, but yeah. Okay, so Zelensky is ahead in the opinion polls. What's Charlie's response to that? They're gay and woke. Those opinion polls are fake. Nope, he just sidestepped that entirely.
Election of the sovereign is pretty questionable.
No, not in those circumstances.
Okay, then we disagree.
No, okay, that's fine. But give me another reason why Ukraine...
They are the most corrupt country in Europe that never even met the most remote standards of joining NATO. Do not know where a lot of the...
Okay, I mean, he's not wrong about that. It doesn't have anything to do with Russia invading Ukraine. It's not like Russia invaded Ukraine to be like, we need to fight corruption in Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine to turn it into Belarus, which is known for its anti-corruption initiatives, or more Russia, which is also known for not being a corrupt kleptocracy, famously.
This money is going.
I don't disagree that there is a problem with corruption, but the most corrupt country in Europe, are you sure about that?
I'd have to think, I'd have to double or triple think about that, but they're very corrupt.
Okay, so that's a little bit doubtful. It's not absolute.
Well, I mean,
there's plenty of corruption around. I mean, let's face it.
Ukraine was an unimaginably poor country that was that was in the grips of severe income and wealth inequality, and a nation state that was also run by corrupt oligarchs in the same exact way that Russia is run by corrupt oligarchs. That is not, I don't think that's an incorrect assessment. Having said that, none of that has to do with Russia's invasion, unjustifiable invasion and occupation of Ukraine. So at this stage, bringing that up is really fucking stupid.
We are talking about comparison with some of the states you're doing business with in the Gulf.
Oh, of course, but we're not giving them money, they're giving us money. That's a difference, right? Saudi Arabia is...
Oh, so it's fine.
Well, hold on a second.
It's morally acceptable to take money from corrupt people.
Well, hold on. First of all, as far as morally acceptable, you do what's best in the benefit of your country. And so, for example, we were allied with Russia during the Second World War, and I'm glad we were. And I would ask you,
don't forget.
How much money is too much money to send to Ukraine? We're at $200 billion right now.
I don't think you have to send any more money to Ukraine.
We agree.
I think you have to agree to support them as a free country and perhaps sell them weapons, like you're very happy to sell weapons to less free countries. And I think Europe will pick up the slack, as we ought to. And I don't disagree with some of the comments about Europe not looking after its own security. I just don't get this approach, which was supposedly to end the war quickly, which now seems to be elongating it, and in doing so, throwing up a smokescreen of very variable facts, if they are facts at all, about how things occurred, which actually isn't helping things. And if people can't see that Putin is stalling, I'm just. Really
I agree with you.
surprised.
I think he might be stolen.
And therefore, and I think even your president has acknowledged the fact that he thinks he might be stolen.
That's correct. So we don't have a disagreement there.
No, we don't. No,
We just have a disagreement about the efficacy of tactics, and we don't know. And I'm willing to say we could be wrong.
No. Oh well.
Of course, you could be wrong in life.
Yeah.
I mean,
we could all be wrong, but actually,
Damn, it is disastrous that the strongest showing that Charlie Kirk had was against a fucking professor, whereas the students literally destroyed him. Like, the students themselves actually cooked his ass, and the only person that Charlie Kirk at least looks like somewhat competent against is this guy who I guess is a Cambridge professor, but I don't know if he is actually a professor.
bringing that war to an end consistently actually isn't going very well, and I would just suggest to you that whatever tactics have been used are perhaps not the best, and they are certainly.
Professor took up a hard topic. No, it's not a hard topic. Talking about how disastrous Trump's Ukraine policy has been is not a hard topic at all. Are you kidding me? I would unironically, if Charlie was like a sincere actor here, he's not. I would be willing to concede to some of the points that Charlie is making in this conversation, with the exception of Trump's disastrous mishandling of Ukraine, claiming that he was going to actually end the war on day one, assuming that Vladimir Putin is actually a responsible party that genuinely is interested in a ceasefire, and not simply using the pre-existing relationship that he has with Donald Trump in an effort to continue in an effort to basically get Trump to sever ties with Ukraine while simultaneously consistently pummel Ukraine and then further encroach into Ukrainian territory, as opposed to like trying to find a reasonable solution where Ukrainians will not be resentful for the last 3 years, which is impossible.